All right, good afternoon. We are here for an initial budget meeting of the Newmarket School Board. It's November 26th, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. So Susan and Mary have prepared a document for us. They're going to walk us through it. This is one of several meetings that we'll have to discuss the budget for 2020-2021. Thanks everybody who's sharing their time with us tonight as well in the gallery. So Susan.
Okay. Well, we have done a tremendous amount of work, and I can't thank my administrative team anymore for the efforts that they put forth to be able to come together and at least introduce you today to the concept of what we are proposing for next year. We still have some additional work to do, and I can really say that Marie has been working absolutely tirelessly, nonstop, night and day to get us to where we are now. So I just want to express my gratitude to her for coming in and rolling up her sleeves and pulling this together. It's a position, as I've said many times, that anchors a lot of what we do here, and not just in the NCU, but it enables others to be able to do their jobs well. And we have, it's been quite a painful 6 months not having somebody like Marie working side by side with us. So again, I just wanted to express my gratitude to Marie, to my staff for all they've done to be able to sit here today with a proposal that I think we all feel pretty good about. In addition to introducing Marie, I'd like to introduce Jen DiStefano. She's the assistant principal at the junior senior high school, and we have been dividing and conquering to get many things done. And so she has stepped up, and she's the one that put the budget proposal together. So she's here with us tonight to present, the FY21 budget on behalf of the junior senior high school. So thank you very much, Jen, for being here. And for the viewing audience, if there is cameras going in all directions.
Yep.
Okay. Sean Pine, our elementary school principal, is here. Next to him is Jason Carey. He is our IT director. Greg Marles is our facilities director, and of course, my left hand in the administrative office, Erica McNeil. So thank you all for being here, and we're just going to kind of walk you through the concept of what we are proposing for next year. And there's many moving parts, but I always say that a budget is nothing more than a financial representation of the program that you're delivering. And so what you'll notice in this budget document that I start off, reminding people of that. And then, I do a little bit of an overview and analysis of enrollments, because we're all about the students, and without the students and the needs and their interests, there is no program to design. And of course, in order to be able to deliver the program to the students, we have staff, so there's a little staffing analysis I want to spend some time on. And then, of course, the numbers that support the programming. The numbers that support the programming, although we have done a tremendous amount of work on the backside, we have not been able to pull all the various parts together to be able to give you a final number tonight. But we can certainly review with you what will be what's included in those numbers. So to begin with, I'll talk a little bit about, kind of our goals. As we looked at the budget and all of the various pieces and parts, we know that we're going to be heading towards a visioning process next year. And so this proposal is not to reimagine our entire educational program here, but to provide some targeted improvements next year, so that the students are are growing in their experience with us. So there's a few areas that we have some deficiency, known deficiencies, and we're not going to be able to attend to all of them next year because some of those will be attended to when we redesign our schools to meet our vision. So what we were thinking here is that we would look at some targeted ways we could improve the learning experiences for kiddos that wouldn't be wasteful. In other words, we wouldn't be introducing something new that we then would have to do differently or reimagine in the following year. So with that in mind, we have brought forward a budget that we think is pretty responsible, but it does include some requests for some increases. So one, we wanted to be able to sustain or advance existing school initiatives. So prior to my arrival, there were some initiatives that had been in play, and we've been trying to support many of those. And they're in this, in the arc of implementation, right? So, there was research done and some choices that were made, and certain things have been implemented, and there's still more work to be done. So, for example, we have a reading and writing curriculum that was introduced 2 years ago at the elementary school, and that's K1 and 2. And then we need to attend to the transition from that program and the curriculum that was introduced there to the 3rd grade in the upper elementary school. So we can't just wait and let, there not be some, like I said, vertical growth in the area of literacy. And so you'll see that one of our goals for this year is to take a look at, what programming do we need to add in that area so that we don't have a curricular deficiency that would be detrimental to the growth of our students. So that's an example of an existing initiative that we want to continue on. And then we have to attend to some essential needs that if not addressed would impact students in a negative way. And as you know, from earlier this year that we learned that a significant portion of our high school programming was being offered through VLAS, which does not provide the quality of educational experience that I would want for a high school student. And so what we are asking for is 2 FTE to help introduce some more elective programming at the high school. So that's an example of, we want to the extent that we're able to, plug some gaps here so that our kiddos that are juniors, are not, are receiving, a much more rigorous and interesting course offering for the upcoming school year. And
so some people might not know, if they're listening, what VLAX is. It's virtual learning. It's online classes. You take them, you literally sit in front of a computer. There's no live teacher. There is some availability. There's like teacher hours, like you can call a teacher at night. I mean, there are fine people who do that program, who teach it. A lot of them are New Hampshire teachers. They do that in addition to their other jobs. But it's as you might imagine, it's not quite the same experience as being in a classroom, live, being able to exchange ideas
only
with
certain
folks.
teachers, only certain students have the ability to self-teach like that, and there's no peer support. There's a lot of lack in it.
It works for some. I mean, and there's just some courses that just about any district might not be able to offer that are a little specialized, and so there's some utility there as well. I mean, they offer really a wide range of classes, but certainly for core classes, we'd like to be able to offer a full live program at the school, and also some more live electives.
So thank you for that, Mike. And then the third target area that we needed to provide some support and resources towards is our facilities. So we have, of course, this marvelous renovation and expansion project at both schools, and both those schools will be online 100% next year. So with the additional space that we have, we're gonna need to add some FTE in that area in order to be able to keep it clean and well-maintained. In addition to that, we wanted to provide some coverage on the weekends. One thing that was a little worrisome to me is that we don't have coverage on the weekends, but yet we want to open up our facility to the community, and where we have very sophisticated systems, and if there was an emergency, not having an employee on site while the building had occupants was something that we all were very uncomfortable with. So you'll see in this proposal that we're recommending that we add some 0.5 at each school to cover the weekends. The other advantage of doing this, of course, is that there's a lot of maintenance that can take place that you can't do during the school day. So if there's something that needs to be done in a classroom, you really can't do that while the teachers are here. And in the evenings, of course, you're trying to clean and get the spaces ready for the next day's learning. And so there often is not time to do the preventive maintenance that you want to maintain the systems that we have. So by having somebody there working on the weekends, then they can also be doing some additional cleaning and some repairs and some PMs that you'd want to in order to preserve the asset and investment the community's made. So those are the three areas that we're focusing in on in terms of our priorities for the upcoming year. So if you'll turn to page 2, what you'll see is a little information about enrollment. So we're looking at a slight increase in our overall enrollment for next year. One of the things I want to say is that this is based on patterns from prior years. So when I'm projecting what the enrollment's going to be, I'm looking at, how many kids do we typically lose when they move from grade to grade, or gain when they move from, let's say, elementary to middle school, or middle school to high school. So there's certain patterns, and you can use forecasting techniques in order to be able to identify those patterns and then apply them to the next year. So that's how I came to what I'm projecting for next year. But what it does not take into consideration is that we have new facilities. In my experience, when you upgrade your facilities, oftentimes you'll have one of two things happen. One, many folks in town may elect to put their house up for sale, and those houses will then become like gold on the market because families will want to move into your community because there's opportunities for wonderful experiences for kids when you have new spaces, and so it can be a magnet for families with children. So there's no way to be able to capture the impact of that yet next year. So when we open, we might have many more students than I could ever anticipate coming in, and there's no way to be able to project that. So I just wanted to make note of that because we won't know until we open up school next year exactly what those numbers will be, but this should give us a pretty good idea, and they're the numbers we use when planning the teaching staff that we'll need at each level. So in essence, at the elementary school, we're anticipating we'll have four more students, and the largest class would be in the second grade next year. Given that the way that we have structured our lower elementary programs, we have grades kindergarten, grade 1, and then we have a hybrid grade, 1, 2, and then we have a grade 2. So we're able to absorb, the 4 additional students that would be in the second grade next year without having a significant impact on class size. So we're not looking to add any staff there in order to accommodate this. It's not a tremendous amount of growth when you're just adding 4 kids to a population of 500. At the middle school, we're looking at fewer students, and that is because we have a large grade that will be going up to the high school, from the 8th grade, and so when you have a large grade that goes up, and at the high school we have a very small senior class, then we're going to see what appears to be a little bit of a bubble coming into the high school. So it's not a significant drop at the middle school level, but we are expecting fewer students in the middle school than we have this year. The high school, we're looking at about 22 additional students. And so, again, that's a reflection of having a large grade come up from the 8th grade and graduating out a small class in the 12th grade. So overall, we're looking at an increase in enrollment of about 14, which represents a 1% increase in our student population. Any questions? Erica will speak to some of our special populations when she gives her presentation shortly. So we'll talk about what's going on in the world of special education and ESOL in a few minutes. So in terms of staffing, if you can turn to page 3, I do want to spend a few minutes on this too. This gives you a sense of how our staff is distributed between the 3 grade, 3 school levels. So right now we have over 100 personnel that work in the elementary school. At the junior high school we have about 40, just south of 40 FTEs, and then at the high school we have approximately 49. How that breaks out though varies, of course, because the needs really at the high school level are going to be different than the needs at the elementary school level, because elementary school you're focusing on developing numeracy and literacy. Not that you're not growing that for the rest of their career. I think literacy is something that hopefully is growing and expanding throughout our life, but certainly the foundation is set at the elementary school level. So you would, it's not surprising that you would see smaller class sizes, especially at the lower level, with a core of English language arts teachers. So you'll see there that you have 4 English language arts, plus you have regular ed, plus you have a lot of special education, and you have paraprofessionals, almost I think in every class, if not pretty close to that, right, John? Yeah. Yep. So a very robust staffing plan at the elementary school, and really no need to modify that at this time. At the junior high, so if you look, I'm going to point out a few things that I've highlighted in red, and I'm going to speak to them because the viewing audience is not looking at this. So if you go to the first one that I have highlighted in red, it's computer education. So one of the things I found interesting when I did this analysis is that computer education were providing less programming as the students move forward in their educational experience, and that was something that I found to be a little bit disconcerting, because in the 21st century world in which we live today, coding and digital literacy and it kind of underpins most anything that we do in any industry, whether you're going off to higher education or you're going to be a tradesperson. The systems that are used today are largely, controlled through electronic means. And so to not have more programming in computer education as kids are moving through their educational continuum is something that, is something we're going to want to address. So we have a full-time teacher at the elementary school, and then we have a 0.6 allocated for the middle school for their exploratory programs, and then it drops down to 0.4. So normally you would see more at the high school level, not less. So that was something I wanted to point out.
Is it a function of SST as well, in terms of having opportunities over there, perhaps?
It could be, but SST is really pathways, right? Their whole program is designed for pathways. Mm-hmm. But I guess my point is that all students need to have a certain amount of proficiency in this area.
Perhaps not to that degree.
Not to that degree, that you're becoming a computer scientist, mm-hmm. But certainly there are many, many things that we need to learn about, including things like digital. How do we have kids critically consume information so they're not seeing something on social media and thinking that's a fact, and then reacting to that as if that's mm-hmm. the be-all and end-all. They don't have the let's say the critical thinking skills to say, let me let me look into that, you know? Is this source, a source that's valid? Are there other points of view? Is there other information I would want to learn about in order to be able to assess the situation? And so I think there's many, many ways that that students need some support and programming in the area of digital literacy and computer science. So that was one I just said, wow, well, I think that could be an area where we need to add some. Now, I will say that and also say that, you know, some of these areas you have critical shortages in teaching professionals available, you know, and computer science is one of one of those areas. So you can't add the program if you can't find the people. So that was one. And then foreign language, no foreign language offered except if you can afford to, you know, at the elementary school level. And one of the things, you know, that's important to me is equity in opportunities for all students. And so if we're offering something as an after-school program, which we are, and we have an outside third party that comes in and does that, if a family can't afford to pay $500 in order to participate, then they don't have access to that opportunity. So, you know, I'm just flagging this as something that, you know, at some point it would be really nice to be able to offer some programming down at the elementary school level that will allow all kids to have the opportunity to explore cultures and languages, and I think since we have over 10 different languages spoken within the families within our community, you know, there could be opportunities there to be able to leverage some of our those community assets to offer some experiences for our kids. So I'm just flagging these things. I'm not, you know, just bringing them to your attention as.
Now, Susan, would that be something potentially, the ones where you don't really have a delta in them, just for us to look at in the visioning process or beyond to see where that, if that fits into the process moving forward?
Yes, these are things that make me go,
Okay.
You know, that I would share with you. And also because we're asking for 2 FTE at the high school, but I'm not telling you where we're going to be allocating those. It's too early this time of year. We don't have the program of studies finished. You know, there's a whole marketing process, course selection has to happen, you know, balancing of the master's schedule, all of that before we would really know how many sections and what courses were of interest to students. So,
Susan, it sort of harkens back to your whole thing of the projection of the students. If it ends up we have 10 more 5th graders that come, for an example, you would then have to work with Sean to come up with a plan to make that happen. So my feeling on that, you know, I don't necessarily need to know today what those electives are going to be. I trust the administrative team to help us determine what the best course of time is for our students. That's just my opinion on that.
It's challenging to project a budget out a year from now.
I mean, it's student interest. It's, you know, a million different variables come into play to determine what the best choices are.
Can you find that professional
Yeah.
to teach it?
yeah. So there's many things that come into play. It's complicated, it's messy, but I know that the need is there, and we have many opportunities that have and courses at the secondary level that our teachers have, you know, said that they would be, you know, really excited about developing some curriculum and offering them to students. So one of the things I will say about that is that, you know, Jen has been doing an awful lot of work at the high school with the teachers there. She and Delaney are kind of championing this process, and you know, all of these additions are going to be reviewed through focus groups of students after this break, and then we'll do some further refinements so that we can actually begin to market and see what kinds of student interest we would have. You know, there's a lot to the program of studies, and we're not going to get it all this year, but we're going to make some definite and clear improvements to our process for one, and to our offerings. So more will follow. That will come to you. We'll bring the program of studies to you when it's time for that to be brought forward. So that was another one. Guidance. So foreign language. You know, we're not offering anything at the elementary school that I wanted to point out. Guidance. So when we look at guidance isn't college, you know, writing, you know, and helping helping students prepare for college applications. I mean, guidance services are very complex. There's counseling services, you know, that's part of, you know, how you deliver some of your social emotional curriculum. Study skills, things like that are typically part of, you know, the plethora of things that, you know, you find out of being offered through your guidance services. And so here, I feel pretty comfortable that we're offering, actually happy that we have a guidance counselor here. In my prior school district, though I was the secondary level at the elementary school, we didn't, at any of our elementary schools, we did not have a guidance counselor. So that was something that's good. Like I said, your programming at the elementary school is pretty rich. At the junior high, you have one. Okay, that makes perfect sense to me with the number of students that you have. But what is still a little light, I think, is at the high school level, because in addition to the counseling programs, you are starting to work with students to develop, you know, kind of a sequence of courses that they want to take in order to, you know, move towards some kind of post-secondary endeavor, and that requires another layer of counseling that you really aren't going to see at the elementary and middle school. So I'm not, you know, suggesting right now that we add there, because we have, as you know, most of you know, we did some restructuring there that I think is going to take the pressure off, and I would really like to see how that plays out before we just start adding. We might be okay with the increase of and restoration of a full-time registrar and administrative assistant. Let's see how that plays out. Also, in the IT area, we've added that position too, to work kind of on the backside of the scheduling process. I really want to see that mature a little bit before we just go saying we need more and more and more. So that's why I'm kind of holding there, but it's still something I want to keep my eye on. In terms of wellness, so you'll say, you know, this, you know, why did you flag this one? I flagged this one because when you look at the graduation requirements, we're only asking students to have a quarter. Okay, so or one semester credit for the high school, but the staffing that we have in this area is significantly more than you would need to support that graduation requirement. I just point that out because in some areas we're providing tons of programming beyond what your high school graduation requirements are, and in other areas we're not providing enough to meet the graduation requirements. So, you know, again, some of this I think over time will be some balancing. But that's an area that, you know, I want to understand better because, you know, it seems a little bit out of alignment with, and when you look at that and you look at that in relation to like performing arts, you know, that's something that's like, what do we value here? I want to understand that, you know. Look at the performing arts. So we offer 1.3 FTE in performing arts, so that would be music and drama. The same at the junior high, and then we're only offering a third of an FTE at the high school? Yeah. I mean, there's a whole population of students that this is their passion. You know, music is a vibrant part of a high school experience for many, many kiddos. And to only be offering that, to sort of to drop off the radar after you get out of middle school, you're not offering, you know, growth and learning opportunities in those areas for those kids. So you get out of middle school and you get to do some exploratory, and then you get to the high school and you have 2 courses. You know, that's about what 9, 10, 11, 12. So you know, that you know, opportunities there. And then consumer science, again, that's okay. I mean, you can have more exploratory at your middle school level for consumer science, you know, so that kiddos are getting a taste of different opportunities that they may want to pursue at the higher level. But that's what exploratories are about at the middle school. You're exploring different things that might be of interest to you, so that when you get to high school, you can start to focus on different areas that you found interesting for you at the middle school. So when you're offering, you know, a lot of exploratory options, which I totally support, but then you're not backing that up with programming at the high school level, then you're really not providing that, you know, kind of vertical learning growth opportunities for your kids. Okay, so enough of my,
You're kind of wasting the value that you built up.
yes.
Yeah.
And you're kind of, and you're right, I mean, Mike, to your point, I mean, some of these, they might be able to pursue through, the technical, Seacoast, science and
Yep.
technology, because I do know that they have, a consumer science program there, cooking and all of that, so that can be filled
It's
there.
a culinary arts.
Thank you,
Yes.
culinary arts. And so maybe some students will go there, and that might be fine. But I'm just saying that, these are areas where I just, I'm
Good.
saying,
Should be addressed.
we should keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing I'll point out on the staffing is some of our requests. So as I mentioned before, in the area of custodial support, and this is kind of custodial maintenance and in my view, security on the weekends, we're looking to add 1 3/4 positions. So it would be half-time for a weekend at the elementary and half-time, in other words, a half-time person at the junior senior high school so we can keep the facilities open. And then in the current year budget, we have added a full-time position, but it's not scheduled to be filled until the spring when the building comes online. You
Yeah.
probably remember that.
We did that last
People,
year.
we've talked about this along the way with the facilities project, and I think it was in last year's budget. It was because we had some portions of the buildings coming online that we, budgeted in some extra, custodial. I mean, I think we increased the size of the high school by roughly a third, in terms of just the new additions. Greg would have the number, but it's around that. It's like 56 or 54,000 square feet of additional space, which needs to be cleaned every day. The functionality is going to change for the better. The cafetorium is going to be used. This is part of the combined design for elementary productions as well, for plays and whatnot. So that's going to see a lot of use, and hopefully the community will be taking advantage of that space too at the high school. So it's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
But you got to take care of it.
Yes. So it'll seem like a lot, that's a lot to add, but I think it's the responsible thing to do, and so that therefore we're putting that forward in our proposal. If you again, continue down that column on change, you'll see that we have 2 FTE to add elective programming at the high school. Again, I've mentioned that before. And I've given you some examples of just some of them. I mean, it's a long list of what the teachers had. I just picked out a few of them because these are the things that, kids today are excited and interested, in taking. They see all kinds of criminology programming on TV, and there's science behind it, and there's the law, and they combine so nicely in an interdisciplinary fashion that you can really get some really deep learning experiences for kids where they can, translate, what they're learning in, let's say, a social studies context over to how that applies into a science context, and vice versa, how the two integrate together. So some of these courses here, if we're able to pull together the scheduling complications and their student interests, some of these we are hoping will be co-taught, which will be a really wonderful and rich learning experience for our kids. So that's those two. And then the last, in case if we turn on the next page, is the position of an assistant superintendent. So there's a lot of work to be done. And, when you have a 20% turnover ratio, year in and year out, there's an awful lot of support that staff need in order to be able to, become master teachers. And the assistant superintendent is really a key player in our organization that helps us to support the growth and development of the staff. And it's all staff, not just teachers. They also are the ones that typically oversee your grant programming, your mentoring programs, certainly provide some support in the area of curriculum development, where we have some deficiencies. That's something that we really really need. And as we ramp up and go through our visioning process, to have an assistant superintendent in the upcoming year who can really get a solid understanding of where we're at, so that when we imagine our future, we'll have a good understanding of where we're at, where we want to be, and how do we then begin our journey to accomplish and realize our vision. So I just feel like it's a really critical position. We have a lot of work to do to put in some good systems and structures here that will allow us to function and deliver documents like this complete in a timely fashion. And that role is just an integral part of our team and our ability to get work done.
It's always been, I think it's always been an important part, and I fought hard for that position a few years ago, so I'll fight again.
So those are the increases in staffing. The only other thing that I will mention is that I have a lot of other adjustments that we will probably, maybe not saying a lot. There are other adjustments that will be made as we move forward. So as I had mentioned, a couple of things that we need to take a closer look at. So we're offering math, and we're offering math labs. And math labs are covered by teachers, but there's really little or no instruction going on. In the math lab, students are engaging with online programming and curriculum, and so I don't know that that's really a good use of our intellectual talent. So when we start looking at scheduling next year, that will be something we're going to take a good hard look at. So again, if we're not going to need math labs because we're not really advancing student learning, like I want to advance learning for students, which requires some instruction, more instruction than what I'm seeing in the math lab model we have here now. And so that can be repurposed for other electives perhaps, or other types of positions that we see the need as I get much more familiar with this. Jen and Delaney get much more familiar, with what our student population's needs, desires, and interests are. So there'll be some shifting around, as we move forward. And I just wanted to point that out. Another thing that
it's just the concept again. It's it's self-evident, but you just want to make sure that resources are spent wisely, that we're actually getting value for what we're doing.
yes.
And then as Susan's mentioned several times, that this is sort of a year to lay the foundation for a visioning process to go forward. And it's what we've been talking about at every meeting, that ideally your budget is not just a linear increase every year. It may be a decrease in some years. If it's thoughtfully directed at your programming, and you need in order to have that in place, you need to have an overall vision. And lots of good things have been done in the district over the years, but there's never been that complete vision, and so you may have some misalignment with different initiatives and lack of follow through and all that. So that's going to be different going forward. I think after that, it'll be everything on the budget will be, you'll be able to say, hey, we did this because of a vision.
It will ground the work that we do and the timing of what we do, and implementation. Any good implementation, sometimes you might have a targeted investment while you ramp up. In other words, you don't just want to say, we're going to do this and just drop everything that you're doing now. There's a shift that needs to take place because kids have to continue to grow and advance, and you can't just drop everything and start something from scratch. It's not good for the teachers, it's not good for kids, and those types of implementations often fail. You will never get the systemic change that you're looking for if you don't provide the support in the scaffolding in order for staff to be able to modify what they're doing, to modify the schedules and structures to support your instructional vision, and to do it in a very methodical, slow but sure process. So we'll get there, but we will be able to absolutely say the reason why we're doing this is this. It might be a little bit more next year, but we'll start to transition. I'm not one that believes that resources should be allocated, as you know, in the same areas year in and year out, because student needs change, and our programming should be flexible enough that we can adapt, you know, different strategies to, you know, to attend to the needs that are in front of us. And so that means, you know, shifting things around a little bit, you know, from time to time, and in a targeted way. So, in the end, our proposal is to move forward with 4 3/4 positions for the upcoming year. And I'm hopeful that on Saturday we'll be able to tell you what the cost impact of that is. I already know that in some areas, as Mike said, we're not going to be asking for as many resources, so we just don't have all of those pieces and parts pulled together. There are some things that we do know. The health insurance rates came in at, depending on the plan, so we have multiple plans, they were either 4% or 4.1% increase, and the dental rates will increase next year by 3.9. In this proposal, and what you get from us will not include the settlement of the Paris contract. Remember that will be a separate warrant article that will go before the town. So we won't have any information about if there's a change in health insurance there, the impact of that until we go a little further down the line. But this is kind of just based on sort of status quo. For the plans we have now, with the employees that are on those various plans, we're calculating it based on these increases here. We're also going to, we've also included a 7.5% increase in transportation. The contract is up this year. I have reached out multiple times to our transportation contractor to get some pricing for next year. I have not received that pricing yet, so we're plugging in 7.5% increase, and we'll go out to bid for a multi-5-year contract. I think is what you did the last time, and we'll do that again next year. You know, once we have the capacity to do that, so that will be built in. And other than that, I don't have much more to share, but I will certainly take any questions, comments, thoughts about the overview that you might have.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, and I like the layout. It's easy to read and follow. I particularly like this district staffing chart. You can really look down and have a quick understanding of where resources are, where they're needed. So thank you for putting that together. I mean, it takes a lot to whittle down something that looks so simple. It doesn't look like much, but you really have to. I know there's a lot of work involved in doing that, but that'll be a great way to present it, I think, going forward.
And also, when we make shifts in the future, instead of just having a change column, we would have, you know, a column where I could show shifts. So if we're reducing FTE, let's say I said math, but we're increasing in computer science, that you would see it lower there and increase over there. So there's a lot of ways that I've used this historically to help people follow, you know, where money and bodies are shifting from place to place. So I think you'll find it to be a really helpful tool as we move along. So if there's no other questions, the format tonight, we're going to start. So what you have is the narratives from each of these administrators, and they're going to share with you, you know, the highlights of what they're requesting for the upcoming year, and then we'll do question and answer sessions after each one presents. So Sean will go first, and he'll you know, 5-10 minutes of you know, sharing with you what he's hoping you will support, and then we'll open it to questions that you might have for him. And then when Sean's done, we'll go to Jen, and we'll just go through the order that it appears in your packet, okay?
I'm determining the secret for, I guess I should have touched that mic. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, doing well, doing well.
Velcro to the budget.
What's that? Velcro. I got to put that on here. As Susan had shared with you, this is kind of just a budget overview of what I'm proposing for the elementary school for the 21 fiscal year. Some of the most significant things you'll see that I'm asking for some money to look at a third grade reading program. Susan mentioned that earlier on this evening, that currently we're running a Super Kids reading program that covers grades K through 2. It's been very successful. However, we're seeing there's a bit of a rough transition for our kids moving from second to third grade. So it's not that my teachers aren't doing a great job, it's just that it seems to be something that making that transition from that Super Kids program that is fairly scripted, really builds that basic skills. Now we're transitioning kids into taking those skills, working on the comprehension, but while still solidifying those skills they used at second grade. So we are going to be doing some research as myself, Ms. Raffo, Ms. Cochran, along with some of my teacher leaders, into finding out what sort of programs schools that are currently using Super Kids in the K-2 model use at third grade. It may be a program, it may be an approach, but I had earmarked $10,000 for that, for a pilot program to see how that runs. So, you know, the important thing is we all know that by the time a child is leaving third grade, we really want them solidly at grade level, because if they're not there, it's a struggle to catch them up. Oftentimes they don't catch up. Those are the students that are typically the highest at risk of not finishing high school or just squeaking by. So that is something that we want to address, not only as an administrative team, but as a third grade team. They've been asking for this for quite some time. So looking to address that need right now. And that is under the textbook supply line that you can see there. Also, some other things that we're looking at is that I have a very rich co-curricular program after school. That program encumbers athletics, like our well-known jump rope club. Everybody knows our jump rope club, and it's a great thing to brag about when I'm outside of Newmarket. But it also encompasses like the garden club and the recycling club and clubs that are after school. And we want to afford those teachers that have been highly dedicated to bringing those opportunities outside of the classroom, the confines of the typical classroom day, a little bit of an increase in their salaries. I haven't increased those salaries in quite some time. I would have to say at least 4 to 5 years. So I'm looking to do that increase. Overall, when you take the advisor line and the coach's salary lines, they are up about $1,000 combined. So they're small increases, but well-deserved increases. You take a look at a person like Nancy Miller, our PE instructor. Her heart and soul are dedicated into providing those opportunities in kids, and we need to, we need to, and I need to really recognize that beyond just a thank you for doing so much that you do. So I'm looking to do that as well. Other lines that you will see that in our library media area, I'm looking to increase the amount of money that we are spending on our books and periodicals. Ms. Stern has done a great job in updating what we have to offer to our kids. There's a big push right now for nonfiction reading down at the elementary level. Unfortunately, we're more heavy on fiction right now. So we're looking to go up. That increase is only about $500 in the books and periodical line. Also, there's a small increase in the supply line for the media center as well. And that's in terms of just to be able to repair what we currently have, rebound books, that sort of thing. The other thing that you would see that is an increase is my field trip line is up a little bit. It's up about, well, more than a little bit. It's up around $3,500. Field trip is a kind of a tricky thing for us at the elementary school. I can tell you that $3,500 increase is reflecting the jump rope club travel, the demo team travel, that typically gets reimbursed by the American Heart Association. But I want to make sure if for some reason why all of a sudden that money dries up, that we have that earmarked there. We're also looking to add a field trip to the Art Museum in Manchester. Someone help me. Currier, thank you. The Currier Art Museum for the 5th grade students as well.
We just bought another
Frank Lloyd Wright House. They have two. I think they're the only museum in the States that has that. Yeah. So, we're looking to do that. The reason why I say field trips are tricky, because the PTA actually offers money to each of the grade levels. I believe for grades K through 4, it's around $10 a head, and then at 5th grade, it goes up to around 15, correct? So,
I remember that.
yep. And we're very fortunate. It's a wonderful opportunity that they give us, and it does help defray those costs, but it also plays a funny with that budget line, because we can budget for it and thinking that we're going to need so much money for 5th grade field trips, and all of a sudden we get a big infusion of money from the PTA, and that drops it down. But again, I want to make sure we have that money as kind of a placeholders in there, so we can ensure those really rich opportunities to learn about the town of Newmarket, for instance, when they do walking trips, or when they go to the Seacoast Science Center. Those opportunities are afforded the children. Besides that, pretty much my budget is pretty much level funded, maybe up a little bit here and there, but I try to be, pretty fiscally responsible in developing this, in providing the opportunities that we have here. It's fantastic that we have the new building. So we have a lot of furniture that we are looking to get through a bond proposal. So the furniture lines are pretty low, but that's taking into account for that thing. I did put money in as placeholders for, just in case we have a teacher's desk that breaks a leg or something on that line. So there are money to cover that as well. In a nutshell, that's really the budget, the significant changes in the elementary school budget. Questions at all?
And nursing supplies, is that the new, part of that is part of the new law that was given to us to supply feminine products?
That is taken into consideration, yeah. That line hasn't changed, but we also didn't spend that line completely last year, so that should be able to cover that new law as well. Yep. And it's a wonderful new nursing facility that we have there. I'm sure most of the board members have seen it. It's a welcome addition. I mean, 3 times bigger than what we used to have, easily.
On those days when they're all lined up in the hallway.
Yeah, and it's coming. I heard Washington Elementary School was closed because of the flu. So, yeah. Any other questions at all?
Thank you, Sean.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't trust them.
Good evening, everyone. As Susan introduced me before, I'm Jen DeStefano. I'm the assistant principal at the Newmarket Junior Senior High School, and I have been working on the budget, so I'm here to present it to you tonight on behalf of the high school administration and junior high school administration. There are a couple of key phrases in the narrative that I'd like to address or sort of direct your attention to, because they're sort of the as we talk about visioning, as we talk about setting goals, these are sort of some of the value statements that we've been thinking about at the junior senior high school as an administrative staff, with Dr. Givens, with Erica, and about where we want to go, what we want to see for our kids at the junior senior high school moving forward. So at the end of the second paragraph, it's our goal to provide an equitable educational environment where all students have access to high quality programming that will allow them to explore their own unique abilities. So we really want to make sure, as Dr. Givens spoke about equity, equity is something that I personally am very passionate about, that all students have equal access and opportunities to a wide variety of programs, regardless of their background or their ability level, that we are able to offer kids things that are going to enrich them so that they can reach the fullest of their potential. So you're going to see some of the things that we're asking for are really driven by that statement. The other statement would be the very beginning of the next paragraph. In order to provide all students with a rigorous, relevant, and engaging program, we have to expand our curriculum offerings to include solid core academics as well as electives that inspire student interest and support them in realizing their aspirations and goals for post-secondary life. Relevancy, rigor, engagement, those are the key words out there in secondary education, and that you need students to feel like what they're learning in class applies to their life outside of school, so you have that relevance. The rigor, where we're having high expectations, again, for all students, not just some students. and also engagement, so that kids are inspired to want to learn, so that they're active participants in their learning, and it's not the same kind of learning that you and I probably experienced where we sat and the teacher did all the talking, right? We know now that who's doing the talking is who's doing the learning, so we want to make sure that our kids are studying things that they want to study, that they're having voice and choice in what they're doing in classes, and that they are really wrestling with concepts and content, because that's where learning comes, right, in the struggle.
When I talk a lot, that's because I'm learning.
That's right. That's right. It's not because he's the president of the board, right? Okay. So you're going to see a lot of the funding that we're asking for is related to increasing our program offerings, increasing the rigor of our existing programming, and also thinking of ways that we can inspire kids to want to learn. The final piece to that is kind of like at the elementary school, field trips are really a part of the high school that tend to drift off as you get older, right? Little kids go on all kinds of field trips. They go apple picking, they go to the farm, they go to the museums, and a lot of times high schoolers don't get that opportunity as much. And it's really a way to, again, enrich their learning, to help them continue to learn outside the walls of the building and see how what they're learning is displayed in the real world around them. And sometimes those expeditions are quite costly, and we want to be able to support our teachers and students in being able to afford those opportunities. For example, I met with the club officers and the advisor of the Model UN Club. They went to Philadelphia last year on a very exciting trip where they won Best Small Chapter. It was a very expensive trip, and they completely self-funded. They did all the fundraising themselves, got donations. That's very admirable, but that's really difficult to ask kids to do over and over again. I met with them last week. They are planning to go to a trip this year in New York City at the real United Nations, where they're going to get to meet the representative, the real UN ambassador of the country that they are participating in, but it's going to be an expensive trip, and they're asking for us to be able to help them. And I want us to be able to say yes, that we can help support you in this trip. So you are going to also see, like Mr. Pine referred to, some extra ask for money to support field trips for students, because we're getting more and more staff wanting to take kids out into the community and out into whether it be businesses to do job shadows, or the Miss Albright just took her anatomy and physiology class to the Museum of Science in Boston to see the Body Works exhibit, and those things unfortunately can be cost prohibitive for some kids, so we want to make sure that we're able to support them in the best way possible. Dr. Gibbons really already went over the enrollment projections. It looks like we're due for approximately a 2% increase at the junior, senior high school level. So in addition to those expanded offerings, we'll have a few extra kids to think about. Going through the summary, again, it really just reiterates our annual budget aligns with both the superintendent's goal and our academic goal at the high school to create engaging, relevant vertical pathways in all subject areas to align to student post-graduation college and career aspirations, as well as meet all their graduation requirements. So we have some students, I don't know if you know, who have taken the same electives multiple times to earn elective credit because there aren't other options for them. Or as she referred to, we have a lot of kids who are taking courses through VLAX, which, like Mr. Kennison said, is great for some kids, right? That independent, self-driven learner who wants to take zoology that we're never going to be able to offer for that one kid, they can do a nice job of that on their own. But when we have other kids who, for whatever reason, couldn't fit things into their schedule, or we didn't offer enough electives, and they're taking courses that are fun and exciting courses, but in a vacuum with a computer. And it's not the same as doing class discussions, interacting with your teacher, being able to have that collaboration. So we want to incorporate those things into our curriculum so that we can pull back the number of kids that are in VLAX and really make that the exception rather than the norm. So some of the specific lines, you'll notice there, I used the historical projections from the last 3 years to see what was budgeted and what was spent. So the majority of things that you'll see in the full budget reflect just what the historical average has been over the past 3 years. There are some things that have shown some increase and some things that have shown some decrease, so I just wanted to sort of highlight those for you here. If you look at new equipment, also a unique thing is there are two separate budgets here, actually, one for the middle school and one for the high school, 2 different sets of lines. So some of it might look like it's repeated, but it's actually the middle school lines first and then the high school lines second. So new equipment is about $9,500 at the middle school level. Most of that is requests of teachers for science equipment for lab experiments. So they're asking for things like probes and balances, and those are sort of the additional things that are coming up so that the kids can do some hands-on lab learning in those middle school science rooms. New furniture, again, is kind of a hefty item, but they have this beautiful new school and they want to outfit it with really great things. Some of the teachers are asking for some new furnishings, especially things like flexible seating, movable tables, stand-up desks that are things that allow more active kids to still be engaged in their schoolwork. And the large chunk of it is actually for outfitting a new art room in the middle school. There has not been a middle school art room in the past, and I think of that 12,000, about 9,000 of it is from the art teacher requesting a middle school art room.
I just wanted to stop for 1 minute. As you know, we had asked staff to give us a list of those, and much of what they had known at that time, or all of what they knew at that time, was put into this request that we're going to move forward for the bond article. We went through, and anything that was not asked for there, so in other words, we just had another section of our building come online. And so every time we have a new section of the building come online and folks get in there, then it's like, oh, well, I didn't know. And so there's still money in the budget for some of these furniture, fixtures, and equipment as a result of what we're loading as we're moving into spaces that weren't included. So I just want to assure you that there is not any kind of double accounting. The stuff that we put forward that's in that Google Doc that got, pulled together for the bond interest is not also included here. So these are different.
Yeah, we made sure to sort of crosswalk those 2 items to make sure we weren't. The 300 chairs for the cafetorium showed up in both places, and I was like, it can't be possible that we want 600 chairs. So, we figured out what was the doubles, and we did eliminate all of those things. A new line here totally would be for summer school. My understanding is that Newmarket Junior Senior High School hasn't run a summer school in quite some time, and as a result, I know of probably over a dozen students who are taking 1, 2, or even 3 English courses, English 9, English 10, and English 11 at the same time, because they're trying to fill their requirements. And as you can imagine, that's a kind of a recipe for disaster. If you're a struggling student who couldn't perform successfully in 1 English class, and now we double you up or even triple you up, the odds of the student be able to successfully navigate that are very slim. Oftentimes it's also disproportionately affecting our students who are identified with special education needs. So they're also losing opportunities to take electives and things that are interesting to them because they're loaded up with extra core requirements. And you can just predict how that's going to go, right? For a kid who already isn't maybe psyched about school, to know that they're coming in and having 3 English classes over the course of 2 days can be very discouraging. So if we were able to finance a summer school program, just a rough outline would be 4 teachers, 1 for each core area, math, English, science, social studies, having them work about 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 5 weeks. That's a normal, in my experience. Summer schools usually are about a 4 to 5 week program. Paying them at whatever, I believe our hourly established rate might be $30 per hour, whatever that is, and calculating it out. This would allow kids to stay on track for graduation towards the full 28.25 credit diploma, rather than having kids opt for that 20 credit diploma that the state of New Hampshire offers. Sometimes we have kids opting for that because they can't fit in all those credits, and this would be an opportunity for students to recover credits. It could also be used for enrichment if there's a student who, barely eked out the class and they want to have a refresher over the summer. We could make those opportunities as well. Sort of down the bottom, instructional equipment repair. That represents a lot of repair to equipment for the Unified Arts programming. There are some sewing machines that haven't been serviced in quite some time, a lot of tools from the wood shop that are in need of repair, and those teachers were asking for those things to be repaired. So I think that is a little bit higher than is normal, because I don't think those things have been tended to in the past. So now we're transitioning into the high school lines. The scholar supplies, $36,000. Again, a lot of new course offerings that we're hoping to have next year through the program of studies. Also new course offerings in the Unified Arts. Ms. Blake would like to do a stained glass course in art, and that requires an initial investment of some equipment. Again, if it doesn't have interest and doesn't run, we may not have to purchase that equipment, but being mindful of it in case it does happen. And also the math department has asked for us to provide them with some graphing calculators for students to use in the higher level math classes. Textbooks at $9,000 is for mostly biology and the world languages, increasing readers for multiple levels in both Spanish and Chinese. And there are many additional courses looking for books. The comparative religion class currently doesn't have an up-to-date text. Biology needs some up-to-date texts, and some of the other electives going forward will require some investments of books. New equipment, that's at $11,000, again focusing on science, unified arts, and a new journalism course that's going to be running that Mr. Anderson from the Media Center is going to have. He's looking for video cameras and editing software and other editing devices, microphones and such, so that the kids can be producing video that hopefully will be showing in the school and maybe getting on local access. New furniture, again, looks high, but we're talking about flexible seating options, and the music and art departments are looking for special seating for performance inside their classrooms, not in the cafetorium. And then finally, as I alluded to before, the field trip transportation has increased by a few $1,000s so that we can support the requests that we're getting from staff and students to be able to let them get out into the world and experience things that will connect what they're learning in their classroom to their real lives. So I didn't go through every single thing. I know that it's a very, very long budget, but those are just some of the highlights that I wanted to bring to your attention. Any questions?
I just had one question about the journalism stuff. I don't know if this is even conceivable, but since the stuff exists downstairs for Channel 13, could there be some sharing of that stuff so maybe we don't have to buy it right away? I don't know if that's, because I think there used to be sort of an agreement where people would come from Channel 13 to teach things at the high school, so just something that I just thought of sitting here.
I don't know. Usually that would depend if Channel 13 was willing to share with us, right? Because our students, you know, they probably have very expensive equipment. The quality of equipment we would be buying wouldn't be as high level, but it would be a nice opportunity for some, we have a green screen already, and kids are working on that. He was looking for a few more cameras, wireless mic sets, so it's not exorbitant, but it would be a good thing to look in and see.
And we do have some students who do help out with the delivery downstairs, so it might be a good
way to collaborate. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. So I have the student services budget tonight. On the first page, you will notice that we've had about a 15 student decrease in our numbers since last year. A lot of that movement actually happened over the summer. We had a number of students who moved out of district who were identified, and that brings our percentage down to 14.16. It's slightly lower than it has historically been. We've usually been in like the 15.5 number range. We also have a number of referrals going on, so I do anticipate that our numbers will start to kind of tick back up into the same direction where we have been overall. For our staffing, we have 16 special educators across the district. 3 of those are fully grant funded through the IDEA grant. That allows for us to have about a 10.5 student ratio, but I will say that that average is very swayed. We do have some teachers who are working with significantly disabled students who have a much smaller caseload. That tends to drag down your average when you're looking at that. So I just put that out there that 10.5 sounds great, but when you're working with 4 to 6 students who are multiply disabled, those numbers can kind of pull the average down. So we're looking to keep our staffing numbers the same and not make shifts there. There are 2 requests that I am bringing forward. Both of these requests are actually current staff members, but last year in our budget process, we were not able to get those into the budget. So a 0.2 FTE speech pathologist and 0.4 4 of the social worker were both put into the IDEA grant. We were given a slight increase. I don't know if people are aware about, there's a percentage of IDEA where some districts aren't spending their funds. Over the years, that money was kind of going into a pool until it accumulated to about $10 million across the state. So what they did last year was they basically took that, used the formula they determined, and said, here's your one-time repayment for all the years that we've been collecting this money. So we got about a $50,000 one-time bump in our grant, but that's not a sustained number. We will not continue to have that number. So my recommendation is those staff members that we put into the grant, we put those into the regular budget so that we can make sure that we are ensuring our students are receiving the services that they are entitled to. The 0.2 FTE speech, that increase really has come from the fact that we have expanded our preschool program. This is our first year with having 2 full classrooms. Historically, we've had 1 class and we've kind of shared the space. This year we have 2 full spaces. So that really kind of, you can't have 2 speech groups happening at the same time in 2 different classrooms with 1 person. So we need another person to be able to deliver those groups. And also I do want to just draw your attention when I say that the preschool special educators have a caseload of 7. That's their identified special education number. We have 4 sessions. 1 session we've maxed out at 12 students, and our other 3 sessions are maxed out at 14. As this is our first year, we're trying to keep those numbers a little bit lower because this is a much different model than we've used in the past for preschool. But know that our preschool teachers are not only working with identified students, they're working with a typically developing population as well, and those provide great peer models for our students. And the social worker really is district-wide. We put the 0.4 in there because about 40% of the students that she's working with are identified families and identified students. But again, looking to remove that and put that into the regular budget for next year. Out of district placements, we're having a slight increase. We've had a couple of students go out of district last year, so we're seeing an uptick there. And when you see the numbers for the budget, you'll also see a correlating cost in the cost rise in that area. So just a little increase there. For ESOL, we have 23 students who are receiving direct ESOL services. However, there are 34 students in general. Once students have reached a certain level of accuracy in their testing, they go on what's called a monitor status. So they have to maintain those levels in their annual testing. So I don't include those numbers because they're not receiving direct services through our instructors. They do get tested every year to make sure that they're still achieving in their reading, writing, and listening skills. But our 2 providers work with a range of kiddos. They're working from preschool all the way up to seniors. They're a wide range. They come from, some immigrant populations who are coming in and really don't have a lot of English language at all, and then some who might have had other languages spoken in the home, and that does impact their skills moving on. But as Dr. Gibbons said earlier, I think it was 10 different languages when we were counting them up earlier, in quite a range. It also keeps our numbers pretty accurate over time for students who are actually receiving. We've really maintained over the last 5 years. So again, not looking for really any changes in our ESOL staffing. I do want to note that when you get the numbers in the budget, there will be a decrease in our special education transportation. I don't know how many people may remember from last year. I had asked that we move forward with maintaining our current contract. I had anticipated with other transportation going up 7, 7.5, 8%, that we looked at a similar increase for special education. Our increase really came in at 1.2. So the contract we were able to enter into for the next 3 years really has gotten us a great rate, and the provider has been amazing. So you will see a decrease in our special ed transportation because the contract really did not see the increases that we thought we may see in a new negotiation. That's kind of the big pieces. Questions for student services?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see if I knock the mic over. So our custodial and maintenance supply budget has a few increases, as Dr. Gibbons mentioned we are requesting approximately 1.75 FTEs for our custodial staff, and this is to help clean the additional square footage that we have. So we're picking up 73,000 square feet of additional facility when these projects are done, and that's a substantial amount. Within your packet that you received today, you'll see how we calculate what the coverage is for those and the needs. It is important to note in those particular areas of those custodial needs, those calculations only cover actual cleaning time. It doesn't add in for setups for events, cleaning of special events, cleaning of bleachers, cleaning of the gymnasium. None of those are added into those. These are just square footage of a custodian cleaning for 8 hours straight. So those where we're at with those particular items. With those increases of square footage and increases of custodial needs, we have increases in costs. Costs for toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies, all of those. So you will see some slight increases in those areas to cover for those additional cleaned areas. We also have requested weekend coverage. And as it was mentioned earlier, the weekend coverage becomes important. Right now, we have nobody in the facilities managing our facilities, manning our facilities weekends. And we have a lot of activities that go on the weekends, a lot of security needs. It also is a point or time that we can actually hit areas that we can't do while school's in session. It might be stripping a floor in an area that's not accessible during school hours. It might be painting out a part of a classroom. It could be all kinds of those things that we can't do while the building is occupied. So this allows us to keep up with our new facilities and keep them nice and clean and sharp, as well as providing those additional security needs for when we have all of these user groups that come in. And we are seeing a huge increase in requests for user group. If you remember, we didn't have really a full-size gym at the elementary school. Now we have a full-size gym. The demand on that gym is huge. Huge, and so the impact is increased quite a bit. And for instance, our rec basketball program has seen some pretty big increases in the number of athletes utilizing it, which has now increased more time that they need to meet the needs of those programming. So we are seeing those, and that's really, I think, an important thing to realize, that it is a community asset, and we are seeing those increases as we have opened that. We also have other increases, and some of these are required by the state, federal government based on code. So for instance, prior to the construction, we didn't have any stormwater systems that we had to maintain. We now currently have 4 underground storm retention ponds. We have 2 rain garden areas and a above ground retention. Those are required to be inspected and reported every year through DES or Department of Environmental Services. We didn't have that expense in the prior years. We have seen expanded costs for fire detection, fire protection, inspections. We have, obviously, with 73,000 square feet, that means more smoke detectors, more sprinklers, more of all of those particular devices, which take more time and more funds. That also means increased emergency lighting, increases in fire extinguisher inspections and HVAC inspections and energy management inspections. All are depicted in our budget submission to cover those additional costs for the increase of the building, as well as increases that we normally would have as we go forward. Excuse me. One of the areas that people probably didn't think about is that we increased the amount of grounds around the building. We have much more area to mow, maintain. If you remember, we've picked up a cemetery, and I know that probably sounds kind of funny to people that we pick up a cemetery in a school district, but it's on the property that we acquired to allow for the new bus loop. We're mandated by the state now, because we are a municipality, to maintain that cemetery to certain standards. So those are all increases that we are experiencing. We're also continuing to do our air and water quality testing and expanding on those, which we do not only prior to the start of school, but we do those throughout the year, and as we have maybe concerns or issues that may come forward, we investigate those. That's pretty much my budget. We have a lot of just mandated things, not a lot of major increases other than where those mandated items are. The custodial need is there just because we have such an increase in services or spaces to maintain. Any questions?
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening. All right, my plan is to run through line by line, all the major lines in each budget, tell you whether they're up or down, and keep in mind that, you know, if I reference equipment repair, that means SAU, elementary school, junior and senior high school combined. So, but before I do that, I'd like to add that throughout the ad reno project, we've added short throw projectors at the elementary school. These are just some of the upgrades we've done. That was at the elementary school, telephones in all the classrooms, a new IP-based paging system in the hallways and classrooms. At the junior senior high school, same thing, short throw projectors with interactive capability in all the new classrooms, all the renovated rooms as well. Telephones in all the classrooms there, intercoms, and then we've also rewired the entire building with updated network cabling and network switching too. So we're good at the junior, senior high school network-wise for the next, I'd say, 8 years, cabling for longer than that. So we don't have to worry about those upgrades in this FY20 budget, FY21. So I'll start with, in general, this budget's up $1,050 compared to last year's budget. So very small increase. In the salary lines, we went up about $4,500, and that's for a part-timer or maybe full-time summer help, just to give us an extra set of hands with cleaning, maintenance, setting up new equipment. We were able to do that this past summer, and it proved to be big help, especially where it was my only employee for the month of July. So that was definitely worth the money. Technical contracted support, that line stayed the same as last year. Equipment repair stayed the same as last year. Telephones is up $3,700, and that is due to the cell phones. We've purchased 6 cell phones for administrators. Internet's up $3,300, and that is due to an increase with our mobile hotspots that we use to support our one-to-one Chromebook initiative. Information services, subscriptions, and fees. This is the line where we put basically all of our software or services, web-based services, student information system, financial systems. That is actually up $13,000 compared to last year, and that's due to we had some biannual and triannual contracts that ended up renewing this year, so we didn't have to touch them last year or the year before. Compared to FY18, we're down almost $10,000. So software is down $13,000. The big increase last year was Windows 10 licensing. That's not something we have to worry about moving forward. New equipment is up $5,600, and last year it was $0. So I think we planned on spending against the trust fund. So it increased there, but we can avoid that with a $0 budget last year. And then the two big lines are the junior, senior high school and elementary school replacement equipment lines. We're still down there, down about $3,500, but these are going to be our major improvements for next year. So we're looking at the SAU office, replacing a couple workstations. At the elementary school, we'll continue to purchase Chromebooks for grades 5 for our one-to-one program. We're looking at replacing our networking switching there, our main switch, and we're also looking to go back to staff laptops or Windows-based staff laptops for all of our classroom teachers and support staff. They were moved to Chromebooks a few years ago. We've tried that out and definitely see the disadvantages and the value of going back to a Windows operating system. So that'll be exciting news there. At the junior, senior high school, again, Chromebooks for our 9th graders to support our one-to-one program, replacement of workstations in our industrial arts lab, so Venera Gattinini's classroom, in adding a few workstations there as well. And then our wireless, we've had it about 7-8 years at the junior senior high school. In all the existing rooms, none of the new classrooms, they have new wireless, but we're looking to refresh that as well. In the following year, we'll do the elementary school. You get about 7 or 8 years with the wireless before they stop upgrading the code on them, right? They want you to buy new hardware, so we've reached that point. But what we can do is take some of the gear we're replacing, move it down to the elementary school so that every classroom has an access point. That's really it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
So that concludes our presentation of the FY21 budget this evening, and we will continue to chat away on the financial pieces that underpins this proposal to you.
It can be again, what, on the 30th? Is that
On Saturday.
Saturday. Yep.
And then what time is the third, Mike? So I'm sure it's not my third.
December.
That is a Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we decided 3:30.
3:30?
So.
I'm supposed to have a PD committee meeting that day, so I'm going to have to miss that again.
Yes, I think that we had noticed that, but it was the only day that we could do.
Okay.
Because we're supposed to have whatever you are
Approved.
supporting, the next night it's to go to the
Okay.
budget.
So what time is the
Right.
third then?
So we'll have to
Say 3:30.
3:30?
reschedule or postpone,
Okay.
you know.
You know, we can, when we can, on Saturday, we can see how far along we
Right.
get.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it would be.
And then what time is the meeting on the 4th with the budget committee? Is there?
I think that.
Is it
I'm
7?
not sure if that's the meeting. I think that.
That-
That's
we're
just
gonna
giving
give
it
to
in?
It's
them,
not a meeting,
And
yeah,
it's
we-
the following week.
Yes,
We're
it
The
gonna
is.
give
9th.
them on a Monday.
Okay, okay.
Right.
9th at 7?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to give them the weekend to be able to read.
That
through.
makes sense.
We have
Yeah.
a whole week with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'll be good because Dan thinks the meeting's on Monday.
It's paying off already.
Yeah, he's got an extra week he didn't even know about.
So, yeah, so we'll, 8 o'clock, I think, on Saturday, so.
9.
9.
I know.
I'll come at 8.
I can come at 8.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Nothing, yeah, we're.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.